You are going to discover the miracle molecule and secret to boosting cardiovascular health and the brand and supplements leveraging this superpower. Welcome to the Marni on the Move podcast. I'm your host, Marni. And today on the podcast, I am syncing up with the co-founder and CEO of HumanN, Joel Kocher. HumanN is America's #1 beet brand, and also the #1 recommended beet brand by doctors, pharmacists, and cardiologists. They've sold over 1 billion doses to date and have been awarded the Nutrition Science Award by MBJ in 2017. During our conversation, Joel shares the inspiration and ideation behind this entrepreneurial venture and the launch of HumanN. He does a deep dive into the benefits of nitric oxide, how it works in our body, and how it is activated by nitrates, hence the beet brand HumanN. We talk about the benefits of HumanN and SuperBeets for everyday health goers and longevity seekers, as well as athletes, and the different ways that you can take them to optimize your cardiovascular health. Joel shares how he went from spearheading Fortune 500 companies, where he was at Dell for a good portion of his career with Michael Dell, spearheading the growth of that company. Flash forward, now being an entrepreneur, launching this brand. We also chat about the workouts and wellness fueling him for success now versus the days of Dell. It's an awesome conversation. I guarantee you are going to want to add this amazing HumanN SuperBeet product to your daily wellness routine. I know I did. Before we dive into our conversation, shout out to our partners at Ketone IQ and SciFox Health. Talk to me about HumanN and your company and where it began and all the good stuff.
Crazy story. You know, maybe some of the best stories are crazy, right?
Yeah.
I'm a tech guy, you know, by DNA. I mean, I did the first 25 years of my career in the tech market. I'm proud, you know, of some of the success stories that I was involved with. I was involved with a couple of the fastest growth companies in the history, frankly, of American business. And we can talk about that as much as you want to or you don't want to. But I retired, you know, super early because it was like this mirage, right? It's like we're all brainwashed to think, oh, well, you know, if I retire early. I mean, that was even one of my goals, personal goals. And I retired super early, and it just didn't work, you know, for me. I mean, I didn't have a mission. It just wasn't working. And I struggled. You know, I went through probably 5 years. I was struggling. I did everything that ex-public company CEOs do. You know, I did consulting, and I did CEO coaching, and I did investing, and I did all these things. And I just, you know, I won't say I hated my life because I love my life, but it just wasn't right. You know, it just wasn't right. So anyway, I go to an investor presentation, and the University of Texas Health Sciences Center in Houston does all the medical research for the University of Texas system.
Right.
I went to an investor presentation because they were looking to, that was, by the way, it was in 2009, and they were looking to commercialize some know-how and tech that they had that had come from the fact that they had hired a Nobel Prize laureate. He had won the Nobel Prize in 1998. One of 3 men who was awarded the Nobel Prize for Medicine for the discovery of the most important molecule in the cardiovascular system called nitric oxide.
Okay.
And he had started a program at the University of Texas to eradicate the #1 killer of human beings in the world. Well, the #1 killer of human beings in the world is not great white sharks.
Right.
You know, it's cardiovascular disease. It's not even cancer. You think it's cancer, it's not. It's
cardiovascular disease is bigger.
It is.
Yeah.
So, you know, their mission really was to focus on this nitric oxide molecule, which, by the way, I'm happy to explain when you're ready. Eradicate, you know, this killer of great human beings in the world. And they learned a lot, you know, over about 7 years and came to some conclusions that The real answer was in food. And that's where I got involved. I went to this presentation. I could not believe I'd never heard of it, number
right.
one.
Yeah.
Number two, I'm scratching my head going, well, look, why has my doctor never said, hey, let's do a nitric oxide test. What's your nitric oxide level? So it intrigued me so much. By the way, I'd never been an entrepreneur. I just run public companies and other people's
right.
companies. That I called my wife on the way home and I said, we just found our life's mission. We've got to do this.
Right.
And we're going to do it ourselves. We're not just going to invest in it.
So talk to me a little bit about nitric oxide, just in case my listeners aren't dialed into this amazing superpower for cardiovascular health.
Well, superpower is a great way to describe it. I mean, in fact, not my words.
Right.
Miracle molecule is the way people in the know describe it. It's a gas. It's emitted from the linings of your blood vessels from the time you're a fetus. It does many things, but the most important things it does is it signals your blood vessels to stay dilated as opposed to constricted.
Closing, yeah.
By the way, that's where high blood pressure comes from, and we can talk about that in a minute. And then it also signals the linings of your blood vessels to stay Teflon-like and smooth,
right.
as opposed to rough, where obviously plaque would stick. Remarkable that Western medicine does not teach its medical community about that. This is why nobody really knows about it. And our company has really taken on the task of educating Americans, about why this is so critical.
So can you increase your nitric oxide levels in your body, or how does it work? Like what's...
Yeah, you
like,
can, but the wicked health problem is that once you cross over the age of 35, your nitric oxide level begins to decline, like so many other things. And probably testosterone is a great metaphor
right.
for the decline. But once you get into your late 40s, early 50s, it's a damn ski slope. And that's the reason why, if you think about if and in absentia of sufficient nitric oxide gas emitted in the linings of your blood vessels actually constrict. Well, that's where high blood pressure comes from.
Right.
Anybody ever tell you that?
No, I mean, I know it comes from your blood vessels constricting, but I didn't know it had anything to do with that.
But nobody ever told you that. That's a sin.
Yeah.
That is a sin, right?
Well, I mean, I know it just because I work in the health and wellness world, right? But most people don't know that.
That's why 21-year-olds, regardless of their lifestyle and their diet, don't have high blood pressure. They don't have high blood pressure because this decline. All right.
So you came up with a product, Neo 40, that sort of harnessed the power of nitric oxide to help support healthy blood pressure levels.
Yeah, our first product, we took this concept, and frankly, to be honest, I mean, the University of Texas had not totally figured it out. And I didn't understand it. Okay.
You were saying?
So the University of Texas really hadn't figured it out. And because I was new to the space, I didn't really understand that. But, being a tech guy and a product guy, I said, okay, I understand the technology. Let's figure out how to formulate this in a way and bring the best of nature to the party. Let's figure out how to get the body to make more of this, because it's very different than other supplements.
Yeah.
So let's talk about collagen or protein or whatever you want to talk about, the other nutrients in the game. Hey, if you are deficient in protein, what do? Take a protein supplement. You're literally ingesting protein. Well, you can't ingest nitric oxide. It's a gas.
Right.
So that's why the complexity of this was so tough. We had to figure out, how do you get the body to make more of this around the clock? And how do you give the body what it needs, the raw ingredients that it needs? Well, what was figured out was that the solution to this problem, no pun intended, was rooted in root vegetables or root science. And that's how we came to the fore, and that's the reason that the company, frankly, just surpassed $1 500 billion as in B, doses of our product sold.
How did you pick beets as the root vegetable to work with primarily?
Great question. God knows. I wish it wasn't beets.
I mean, I love beets. They're like,
yeah,
I
well,
love them. I know most people don't. I know.
Yeah, many people don't. It's very polarizing. It's interesting. In Europe, beets are a hero vegetable.
Right.
In the United States, I would say it's more like a peasant vegetable, but that's changing. And I would like to think we've had something to do. The millions and millions and millions of dollars we've invested in education, I'd like to think that we have something to do with why you can get a beet salad in a restaurant these days, where you really couldn't, a decade ago.
Yeah.
But when we went through an analysis of all the vegetables in the world, basically, I mean, it was like literally a one by one analysis to say, okay, which of these vegetables is the highest in the delivery of the raw materials, good guys, or ingredients, good guys, that you have to deliver to the body to get it to make more of this nitric oxide molecule. And the body is such an amazing mechanism that evolution has delivered a body that can generate more nitric oxide if it's given the raw materials to do so.
Right. Interesting. Yeah.
Beets ranked, I think it was number 2 behind Swiss Chard.
Ooh, I love Swiss Chard too.
Do you really?
Yes, I love it so much.
Most people don't even know what Swiss Chard is, but ranks a close number 2, and
okay.
that's how we landed on.
Shout out to our partners at HVMN and Ketone IQ.
I am a big fan of Ketone IQ and exogenous ketones for racing, training, and everyday health. They give you extra energy, extra focus, and metabolic flexibility. But what exactly are ketones, you ask? Ketones are a 4th macronutrient, like carbs, protein, and fat. They also are fuel for your brain and clean energy without sugar or caffeine. I use 1 shot of Ketone IQ 30 minutes before I head out into a workout or training session. Another one 60 minutes later, and so on. I also sometimes take this just to focus during my workday. And for all my athlete viewers, there's no need to ditch your carbs. You can add exogenous ketones and Ketone IQ to your existing nutrition and fueling plan. Totally different kind of energy. HVMN and Ketone IQ are used by Olympic athletes like Des Linden, world champion triathlete Sam Laidlow, and top world tour cycling team Visma Lisa Bike. If you're ready to get on board and level up your nutrition and fueling plan, I've got a code for you. For 30% off your first subscription order. Link in the show notes.
So how does it work? How do the beets, why eating beets, why this root vegetable, what is in there that helps your body?
Great question. So the precursors to nitric oxide production, in other words, what does the body need, right? It needs dietary nitrates and dietary nitrites to produce more nitric oxide in the blood vessels. Well, it just so happens that these root vegetables, like Swiss chard, like celery, frankly, and beet, they extract these nitrates and nitrites from the soil, depending on what soil and what growing conditions.
Right.
But they extract those. So when we cracked the code, and we did something that no one else has done, we cracked the code on what soil, what farms, fields, weather conditions produce the most optimally capable beets. That's why it's called SuperBeets. Not every beet's a super beet, right?
Right.
To deliver products in a highly concentrated way that then get the body to react in a positive way. I would say that the frustrating part about this is that any beet any celery, any Swiss chard, any banana, if you're looking for potassium. The general public doesn't understand that all vegetables at Whole Foods or Walmart or HEB are not created equal. You can literally buy a banana in 3 successive days and have radically different, like orders of magnitude different of potassium in each of those bananas. So our task was to figure out how to consistently deliver very highly concentrated nutrient good guys so that the body can day after day after day deliver the nitric oxide levels that supports healthy blood pressure and all the good things that go with that.
So we're talking about SuperBeets, but also Neo 40 was your first product, right? So maybe let's dial it back and talk to me about Neo 40 and what that was and how that led you into SuperBeets, or if it was simultaneous.
Well, Neo 40, it wasn't simultaneous.
Okay.
So the company, was incepted in 2009, and we had to figure out a lot of things. There was a lot of technical and scientific challenges there and formulation challenges. Because again, I'll remind you, nitric oxide is a gas.
Right.
So the first product was a combination of natural and synthetic ingredients. But the product was acutely effective. In fact, it was almost like the perfect storm that we figured out how to make this product so effective. We did, I believe it was either 6 or 7 clinical trials, double-blind placebo-controlled on this product. There are drugs that don't have 6 or 7 clinical trials. So we were committed to science from the start. But the effect that it has on supporting healthy blood pressure rivals, frankly, what you can get from anywhere. And in many ways, it really established the company as a disruptor to the traditional methods of controlling blood pressure that have deleterious side effects.
That's amazing. And it's funny how I'm coming to learn about your brand and products as an athlete because of the multiple values and benefits of your product like SuperBeets Sports. But really, you're a pioneer with Neo 40 in the space. Yes. It's interesting how different people come to discover different products.
Oh, it is so interesting. and I would tell you that quickly, in 2012, the company quickly moved into an all-natural solution because we just saw that that's what people were interested in.
Yeah.
And what is so crazy, and I have no better descriptor than to use crazy, is because people ask me this question, they go, I don't get it. You're selling very, very serious innovation around heart health and cardiovascular health and blood pressure support, and yet you're also selling sports products. Well, it's that same mechanism of action, right? It's like if you can dilate the blood vessel, then amazing things happen. The cardiovascular system is a superhighway that connects every major body system in the human body.
Yep.
So if you talk about if you want to take it down to the organ level, it connects every organ. So is it possible to have a healthy cognitive or brain function without healthy circulation? No, it's not.
Right.
Is it possible to have liver function? No. So that's what I love about this is, it's the superhighway. It makes the superhighway work better. In fact, this is the crazy thing too. We have 150 professional and Division I collegiate sports teams that use our sport products. Now, these are people that typically fall in the 20 to 30 age range.
Yeah.
So they haven't been impacted yet by the decline that I spoke about earlier.
Yeah.
But the fact that it dilates their blood vessels, lowers their their oxygen cost. It makes their oxygen efficiency higher, or their VO2 max higher, by virtue of the fact that it expands their blood vessels. So me, being a endurance athlete, and I am, it has a pronounced, probably more of an effect on me, given my age, than it does somebody that's playing football at the University of Alabama.
Right.
But nonetheless, it has a significant enough impact that these 150 sports teams they make it mandatory for their players.
I mean, I could see that. I mean, just, we're always trying to get more oxygen into our blood, and that makes us more efficient and optimizes our health. So I could see it being a tremendous value as an athlete. And then just health and wellness. So when did you introduce the SuperBeets product into your brand? Because you said you started in 2009, was it?
2009.
So you started in 2009 with your company and Neo40. And then when did you bring the SuperBeets into the mix?
2013.
Okay. Amazing. And so talk to me about the different products that you have, because it's not just SuperBeets, not just SuperBeet sports for athletes, it's SuperBeets for everyone. So talk to me about the different products that you have.
Sure. So we have Neo40, of course.
Yes.
Which, frankly, today for us is primarily a medical brand.
Right.
So, we have well in excess of 1,000 medical professionals who are using and recommending our product. In fact, we're the #1 cardiologist recommended brand, in the category, right?
Okay.
As well as the #1 doctor recommended, #1 pharmacist recommended. So, we're kind of, those badges are really important to us because we're so science-based. But after we moved into let's call it the plant-based, 100% plant-based, market segment, SuperBeets really began to take off and become, frankly, the prevalent brand. SuperBeets has a range of products that all are primarily focused on vasodilation of the blood vessels, which in turn provides blood pressure support, but also provides, this is so interesting, amazing energy support. So if you ever thought about the dimension of energy, most people think about energy as caffeine.
Right.
Caffeine equals energy. Caffeine fools the brain. It tricks the brain. It's not true energy.
Right.
But if you think about a vasodilated blood vessel, frankly, down to the capillary level that reaches all the mitochondria. I know you know what mitochondria are.
Yeah, of course.
Reaches all the mitochondria in the body. Now you're talking.
Right.
Because you are down at the cell level. We're talking true cellular level because it's more oxygenated and it takes away the bad stuff faster. It makes the body, which is a machine. I don't care how anyone wants to characterize the human body. It's a miracle. Right. It's a miracle machine. It makes the machine more efficient and makes the machine work better. We hear from our customers as much about energy improvement as we do about, blood pressure levels.
Yeah.
So I wanted to point that out to your listeners, that focus on real, true energy, not caffeine fake energy.
Right. And so do you feel like this is something like you take every morning, or is it more for recovery? Is it both? Like, how would people be using this, whether they're...
Let's bifurcate the use cases, all right?
So talk to me about
it. If you're interested in a healthy cardiovascular system, and you're interested in healthy blood pressure levels, and you want daily energy support, you need to take the product every day.
Okay.
And the product comes in many form factors, right? We deliver it through different nitric oxide pathways, which gets heavy into the science. But we deliver it in gummies, we deliver it in chews, we deliver it in powder, we deliver it in tablets if you don't want to deal with any, sugar or any of the other things that go with
right.
So that's really important. Now, if you're talking about sports performance, that's episodic. So if you want to PR, right, today, I'm going to run a marathon today, I want a PR. Or I'm going to work out like me, I'm going to do 15-mile paddle and I want to, it's hot and I want to deliver a great time, then I'm going to use our sport product.
Right.
Now, having said that, I'm taking the daily for blood pressure support and healthy cardiovascular, but when I'm going to paddle surf or paddle, then, I'll take the sport product. It's fine to take them both.
And now you mentioned that you're into paddle boarding and paddle surfing. So when did you get into?
I'm not only into it, it's my passion, right?
Okay, so talk to me about this. Like, how did you get into it? What are you doing? What are your challenges?
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I've been an athlete my entire life. I was a college basketball player. And then, you don't play basketball, trust me, past 40. So I, was an avid runner, did a rim to rim before anybody knew what a Grand Canyon rim to rim was. And eventually wore my feet out. So I had to find something else. So about 10 years ago, I got into distance paddle boarding, and, I love it. I usually do, depending on whether I'm in the ocean or in a lake, I'll do 10 to 15 mile paddles at pace, at high
Wow,
pace.
that's
These
amazing.
are not leisurely paddles, right? And then I paddle surf. I'm in Florida often, so I paddle surf as often as I can. Don't know if most people know what paddle surfing is, but think of it as surfing, but you're on a paddleboard.
So
in some ways, it's a lot more demanding on your body than just surfing.
yeah. And so what are some of the biggest waves you've surfed?
You don't usually surf big waves.
Because you'd be crushed, right? Yeah.
Yeah, paddleboards, tough. You can't cover up on a paddleboard. You can't get out through a big swell.
Okay.
So it's typically, small to medium-sized waves.
Okay. So because you can't like get into the barrel, like you don't like lift the paddle up. Okay.
Pretty hard to do on a paddleboard. But what I do,
because I've seen oh my God, Laird Hamilton out there, a helicopter.
Oh,
I'm just saying,
no, you're not doing that with a paddleboard. I can flat out tell you. But what I do, and I hope my wife doesn't listen to this podcast.
Because you're not allowed. Yeah.
Because she gets very freaked out when I do it. But I don't like paddling beach parallel. I just like paddling out into the ocean. I like paddling 10 to 15 miles out.
Out. Oh, wow. Okay.
And that's where you see the wildlife. That's where you experience life. And that's just what I love to do.
10 to 15 miles out. That's like open ocean. That's big. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a Coast Guard encounter once where they asked me what the hell I was doing out there.
Okay.
And told me to go back, closer to shore. But
what do you take with you on these adventures? Do you take like a GoPro, food, nutrition?
I don't. I don't. I just take
I'm such a triathlete.
I just take a paddle, man. But I would tell you that's where you see, that's where you experience the true wildlife. The ocean wildlife is out there. You're not going to experience that, 50 yards from shore.
Yeah. Do you ever do trips where you go like, paddle surfing in different like tropical regions, or are you mostly near where you live in Florida?
I'm mostly where I live in Florida. I am planning a paddle from the Bahamas to West Palm. So I'm training for that, and I'm hoping to do that in 2026.
What's the training like for that?
Tough.
Do you do other sports? Do you lift weights? Are you just out there paddling?
No, I lift weights, but it is an endurance thing, right? It's an endurance thing, and that's where our products come in. I have to tell you that even though I have been an endurance athlete my entire life, I'm very well in touch with what I felt like before we had SuperBeets Sport. It was like someone's pulling the plug and draining the endurance power out of your body.
Right.
And the fact that I'm powered by SuperBeets. The
Yeah.
only reason I'm out doing 15-mile paddles, 4-minute miles, is because of my nitric oxide level. And that
4-minute miles?
4-minute miles, yeah.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah.
Because you're powered by SuperBeets.
I'm powered by SuperBeets.
What are some like big lessons that you get from all the sports that you do, like paddle surfing or paddle boarding? Is it just paddle surfing or you also paddleboard?
Oh, I paddleboard. I distance paddleboard, yeah.
Okay. From both of those sports that you kind of take to being now a founder, an entrepreneur, and running a business.
Well, you know, it's endurance, right? I mean, life is endurance. But I think when I think about physical endurance, at the same time, I'm thinking mental endurance.
Right.
But mental endurance and physical endurance, you know, are both very real physiological phenomenon. And the body, as great as it is, has its limitations. So the biggest lesson for me is understand your body, understand what is happening to your body as you age, and do your damn well best to stay in the game.
Yeah.
And, you know, I would like to think, you know, that I've done that. I have 3 sons that play Division I sports.
Okay.
And I'll kick their ass in a 10-mile paddle any day of the week. And they can't stand it, and I love it.
That's amazing. Have you ever had any like crazy challenges out on the ocean that you're like, any crazy stories that you want to share?
Yeah, I got into a bait school, a school of fish bait that, you know, these fish are jumping onto my paddleboard. I was probably about, I don't know, probably 10 miles out. And I knew what was coming next.
Right.
Yeah. And the sharks showed up. And the first shark that breached the water was probably a 12, 13 foot tiger shark. And it startled me, you know, even though I was expecting something.
Right.
It startled me and I almost fell off my board, which probably would not have been a great thing. But these sharks were all in a feeding frenzy because, you know, of these bait fish and the blood's in the water and, you know, everything else. So that ended up being about an hour and a half or so of me just standing there, you know,
wow,
observing this and not agitating the situation.
So you just like stood on your, did you sit down on your board or you just stood on your?
No, I stood. But I will tell you in the same breath, it was also one of the most phenomenal moments of my life because I got to experience that. It was just amazing.
Shout out to our partners at SciFox Health. They offer the lowest price comprehensive at-home blood test with over 17 key biomarkers, some of my favorites being vitamin D, ApoB, homocysteine, and HbA1c for overall health. As a runner, cyclist, and triathlete, I'm looking to optimize my athletic performance and stay healthy through my training and racing as I gear up for the New York City Marathon and Ironman New York 70.3 this fall. I'll be monitoring my ferritin, iron, HSCRP to make sure I'm not overtraining and staying healthy as I build my endurance. It's great that SciFox Health is affordable because you can test more frequently, which is ideal. P.S. If you use my link, you get an additional 20% off your first test. That's SciFoxHealth.com/MarniOnTheMove. That's SIPHOX.com/MarniOnTheMove.
That's incredible. Were you terrified and also just like, wow?
Well, anybody in their right mind would have been respectful. I don't know that I was terrified once I got over the startled,
right.
tiger shark. And these sharks were going crazy around me. I mean, they were just literally, it was a big time feeding. At the same time, you just remind yourself that, you're experiencing nature at its very best. So I love
And
it. I wish I had a GoPro. I
Yeah.
didn't have a GoPro.
But
if
you have
think
your
about,
memory.
If you
Yeah.
think about GoPro on a paddleboard, you're going to paddle 15 miles. Unless
a long
something
time.
like that were to happen, it's just boring.
Yeah.
There's no events. But I learned my lesson. I now have a GoPro.
You do. Yeah,
do.
you never know when you're going to need it.
You never know. You never know. Because I'll tell you, if I'd have had a GoPro that day, I would have been viral. I would have gone viral. That was just amazing.
I mean, that's just such a cool experience. And you went, I mean, that's probably like why I don't swim in the ocean, but that would be like, it's a very cool experience. And I think the fact that you keep going back and doing it, like, it didn't scare you to a point where it would prohibit you from,
This past week, I was surrounded by a school of dolphins, which was so
That's cool.
I've had that happen multiple times. Although I would tell you, I've never had them. I had one on each side of me, literally, within 2 feet of my board. They usually don't get in that, that tight and that close, but it's just the coolest thing.
That's so cool. That's such a cool sport. I watch people. I love watching from like a peripheral perspective, all the surfers and all the people like out in the ocean, like doing stuff like that. I spent a long time windsurfing. So
nice.
Yes, but I
Where's your windsurf at?
In Long Island.
Great sport. Long Island?
Yeah, I usually on the bay, not in the ocean.
Okay.
But I do like bump and jump conditions, but not like ocean, because I'm just, I just don't want to be eaten by a shark. I know it would be a big mistake for the shark, but hey, that's just like an irrational fear I've had my entire life. But I think it's so cool. Like, it's such a great thing. I love watching. I live vicariously through other people that do it. So it's fun. I like paddleboarding. I've done that a few times, but I like to have my sail and to like go really fast. So,
I'm an avid sailor.
You are? Okay.
I am. I'm an avid sailor, and I have been for 40 years.
So this isn't like your first nautical sport.
No,
Okay, so you know the water. That's why like
I
10,
know the
15
water.
miles is no big deal for you. Okay, now it makes sense.
I love it. That's right.
Yeah. Because, I mean, for someone who's just out there paddle surfing, like, that's, not knowing the water, not knowing the currents, the tides, the conditions, the wind, like, that's a big venture. Similarly to knowing how to grow a business.
Well, that's been an experience. I would tell you that my career has predominantly been not as an entrepreneur.
Right. That's what you said.
I was running other people's companies, with the exception of one. They were all public companies. So to take the leap on becoming an entrepreneur, I think it was fraught with risk. I didn't know anything about it. I had a reputation to protect. I could have easily fallen on my face. I didn't know what to expect. And I can honestly say that my expectations were wrong. It was especially in those first couple of years, it was just very challenging. I'm not a status kind of guy. I mean, I was willing to get in and do what it took. I learned Google AdWords. I took the garbage out. I did whatever it took. But I would say that probably people that had been senior executives in Fortune 500 companies, I don't know many that would have been willing to get their hands dirty like that.
So what do you think is like, because I feel like, as someone who's been a founder and entrepreneur my whole life, never having that experience of just running someone else's business, like for me, that seems more challenging than doing my own thing. So like when you were on that side of the fence, running these Fortune 500 companies, weren't there a lot of risks involved in that kind of right? So did you? But you felt like starting your own business was a lot more challenging.
Well, I mean, it's sort of like trying to compare two things that might put your life at risk and saying, which one was more risky. They're both fraught with their own set of specific and particular challenges. I mean, the larger companies, you're more in the public eye.
Right.
You know, you have to be very careful about managing risk. You're probably a lot more risk adverse because you have something that you have to protect. You're protecting shareholders, you're protecting other people's stake in the business. And the challenges are very different.
Right.
Entrepreneurism is just more in your face. I mean, it's up under your chin. Am I going to make the payroll this week? You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And can I use hand-to-hand combat, you know, to get where I need to get by July? So the challenges of both are tough.
Yeah.
I would say that the entrepreneurial challenges, to be fair, are more carnal. You know, they're more in your face. They're more acute than they are in the big company world.
And just for my listeners, like, because we're sitting here talking about your years of senior leadership and for big public companies, you were responsible for working with Michael Dell and spearheading Dell and the tremendous growth at that company. So just for people who are listening, like, you were in a very public, very Fortune 500 company.
Yes, when I joined Dell, it wasn't even called Dell.
Yeah,
So
talk to me about that.
It was a small company called PCs Limited.
Okay.
The company had not become a public company yet. So I was fortunate to have been involved with that journey, you know, over 7 years. We went from a company that no one ever heard of to, you know, a Fortune 500 company. So I was the number 2 executive behind Michael Dell for most of my tenure there. And it was an amazing journey. And, you know, frankly, I wouldn't trade it for anything, but it was also the most pressure-packed, insane way to live a life.
Now, when you were doing that, did you have time to do your endurance sports? Was that sort of like, were you doing that then?
Yes, I ran most mornings, and it might have been anywhere in the world because during that period of time, we expanded all over the world. But, you know, it had to be 3:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Every day.
Wow.
I mean,
okay.
It was 3:30 or nothing. It was
Got it.
3:30 or nothing because, I mean, I don't even know. It's, you know, I look back on it, it was like jumping out of an airplane every day with your hair on fire and no parachute because you didn't know what was going to happen. And I was a young guy.
I was going to say, yeah.
He was 19 years old when I went to work for him. He was 19,
right.
And I was 27. So, you know, you got these 2 kids, you know, who were running a business. It was just unparalleled, probably. Unparalleled.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure, like, it felt, even though, you know, maybe in the early days a little bit entrepreneurial, but...
Oh, it did. And it was.
Yeah.
And it was. I don't want to give you the wrong impression. It definitely was. But listen, for those like you and those, your listeners, that are literally starting from scratch.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that, to me, I now have the utmost respect for those of us that do that.
It's so interesting because I interview so many people on here, and, you know, it's the grass is always greener, right? Like,
always.
You're in a pressure cooker. It's stress. It's like you got to work hard. Like, things don't just magically happen.
No.
Yeah. So what were you? Where were you before you went to Dell when it was PCs Unlimited?
I worked for a Fortune 500 company.
Okay, before that too. At 27.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I wasn't a senior executive, but, you know, I was an executive. I was an executive early on in my life. I probably, at 27, I had responsibility for, it's hard to remember, but probably between 1,000 and 2,000 people. But again, it wasn't like every week I had to worry about whether we were going to make payroll or not.
Right.
It wasn't my ideation that brought the company to the fore. It wasn't me having to solve every early stage problem, from how do I package what I'm selling to what are the right things to say to can I even raise any seed capital. Just had its own problems and challenges, but an entirely different set of problems and challenges. And it takes a lot more courage to be an entrepreneur. I don't think there's any question about that.
Yeah.
The courage quotient, the self-confidence quotient, the ability to ideate, navigate, those things are far greater. Having said that,
Yeah.
though, I would encourage any entrepreneur that's listening, you have to learn very early on to be a learn-it-all.
Yeah.
Because what got you here is never going to get you there. So what gets your company started is not going to take your company to the next level. And you're going to face going to the next level
Right.
perpetually. And when I look at entrepreneurs, let's take the Inc. 5000. You know, our company's been, I humbly say this, but our company's been named to the Inc. 5000 9 consecutive years.
Okay.
Aren't many companies that have made it 9 years.
That's amazing.
The vast majority of companies that get named to the Inc. 5000 get named once, maybe twice.
Right.
What's the reason for that? Because the entrepreneur who's great at ideation, great at inception, great at coming up with an idea, doesn't evolve their skills and perspective to keep taking the business to the next level. And
Right.
I would like to see more entrepreneurs develop, you know, that awareness and that capability so that they keep succeeding.
Yeah. Do you feel like it's every 5 years where you're like, I mean, I guess if you're on the fast track, it's probably like every 2 to 3 years, but
It's
like
every 2 years.
every 2 years where you're innovating. Okay.
5 years is enough time to found 3 companies and drive them all into the ground.
Okay.
You know, you could even argue it's 1 year, right? But certainly every 2 years you have to, you know, you also, I don't even want to think about it like that. I want to think about it like it's a perpetual exercise.
Okay.
As opposed to, okay, after 2 years, I got here and now I have to get there. It's almost like a monthly perpetual exercise because, you know, I've often had people ask me this question. Hey, Joel, you know, you've run businesses or led businesses of all sizes.
Yeah.
If you could only have one core competence as a company or even as a CEO, what would that one thing be? And I think it always shocks them that I answer the question without hesitation.
Okay.
And that is adapting. I want core competence of any organization that I lead to be master adapters. Because if you think about it,
Mm-hmm.
it's a constant landscape change, evolution every single month. And if adapting is in the DNA, baby, you're in a good place. If you are not an adapter, or your company's not an adapter, or you yourself are not an adapter, then it's a fait accompli that the time clock's ticking on your success.
So do you speak at universities or go speak at conferences about entrepreneurship and business and leadership? Do you do a lot of that?
I don't.
Oh my God, you're so good. I'm already retooling my business after we hang up the call.
I don't.
You should. That's so, yeah.
I've tried really hard with this business to put others forward, and I've just kind of stayed in the background.
Okay.
Only recently have I really started to come out a little bit and talk. And maybe it's time. You know, maybe you're right to just say, look, because again, I don't like talking about myself, but, you know, to say this humbly, I'm probably a little bit of a unique cat. You know, I've led a Fortune 500 business. I've led several other public companies, but I've also been an entrepreneur front and center. So it may allow me to give a little bit of a unique perspective, and I've made plenty of mistakes.
Yeah.
Maybe I can help.
What are some big challenges you've had along the way with HumanN?
You know, probably when I think about the challenges we've had here, there's 2 that come to mind instantly. Mm-hmm. The first was daunting, and I remember when we were getting ready to launch the company and launch the Neo 40 product with our test strips. And we did some focus groups with consumers and physicians. And we did 3 consumer focus groups of 15 individuals each, and we did 2 physician focus groups of 15 physicians each. Do you know that not a single physician had ever heard of nitric oxide?
Really? Yeah, that's amazing.
In 2009.
Not a single physician had heard of
Not one. In fact, several of them mistook it for nitrous oxide, which is laughing gas. And only of the consumer focus groups, only one person had ever heard of it but couldn't explain what it was. So I remember stepping out on the street, out on the sidewalk outside the facility and saying to my wife, should we do this? I mean,
right.
This is astounding. We are going to have to educate the world about what this is. So that clearly was the number one challenge, and obviously we decided to do it. And
right,
you know, the company, I spoke earlier in the session today that we've passed our 500 millionth dose. So I guess you could say that we've been somewhat successful at educating the marketplace, although there's a long way to go. The second challenge has just been by nature of the supplement category. The barriers to entry are very low, and the FDA does not regulate this industry as aggressively as I believe they should. So we have many companies that now have knocked us off or copycatted what we're doing.
I was going to ask about that. Yeah.
Yes, and making the same claims when they're sourcing all their ingredients from China. They have none of their own science or none of their own scientists. They've done no clinical trials. They have no expertise, and yet, you know, and they're selling at a lower price. So, you know, unfortunately, consumers just aren't as educated as we all wish they were.
I mean, I think that's part of like being a pioneer too. Like, you're going to have a lot of people that copy you and try to make your product less expensive, or, you know, take it down a notch, dilute it. And I mean, I've seen that in, you know, all of my career, whether it's fashion, beauty. So it's tough to be, I feel like I always say it's tough to be a pioneer. But I mean, and also, like, just speaking of education, I mean, still to this day, there are so many doctors that are not dialed into how food is medicine. You know, I do regular blood testing like every quarter with different blood biomarker tests at home. And then I tell my doctor, like, I'll go in and I'll say, like, XYZ vitamin D was low. Can we retest it? And she's like, how did you test it? And I'm like, I test my blood. I just want to check on it, you know, because sometimes I don't test it every quarter. Like, I'll do every 6 months. And they're like dumbfounded that people are doing this. And I'm like, you are 30 years old. Like, come on, there's no excuse for you. Like, I can understand if you were like,
how long do you think it's going to take to
I think they need to change
that change?
I think medical school, I think it needs to start at education, because I really think that, like, there's like this antiquated, I mean, look, I'm speaking from absolutely no experience. I've never been to medical school. I can't take down anyone's, I think they're being doctors, like students are being educated, right? And I think a lot of people today, younger people that are going to medical school, might have this outside education from, maybe they're runners, you know, maybe they're sports enthusiasts, maybe they're seeing big athletes doing these things at this stage, but it's not taught to them in school, and you only have like so much bandwidth to learn. So when you go to medical school or any school, like, you're given certain books and you have to learn the basics and the fundamentals. And I just don't, I feel like it's maybe nutrition, it's an elective, but it's not food as medicine. Like, it's not an important function for them. So then they you know, you have to go study functional medicine. I don't think that we're trained, like, our society, Western doctors or practitioners are educated to be preventative. I think they're just emergency care people. They're not. And they do a great job at emergency care, but, like, I shouldn't go to the doctor and have to, like, give her a list of the right symptoms for her to check certain things. And that's, I mean, and it's hard when,
frustrating.
Yeah. And you see someone who's like 30 years old
Yeah.
right? Like, I'm like, what rock do you live under? Like,
Right.
I mean, I shouldn't go to her as a doctor, but I'm just using my health insurance, which is like another thing. I mean, I don't only do that. I go to like functional medicine practitioners, but like, you know, stuff like that. I think my listeners are not all doing the things I do, and some of them, you know, are on a budget, so they have to find ways to, you know, stay preventative with their health and use what they have. So that's kind of like, you know, but that's what I don't know when it's going to happen, because it's like the whole thing needs to be changed. Like, it needs to be, I don't know.
We need a disruptive force.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at how things change, right? Things change so slowly. Human beings, generally speaking, are adverse to change.
Right.
And so we need a disruptive force. I don't know what that disruptive force is, but we need a disruptive force to flip this thing upside down. Now, what's happening now with people like yourself is you're educating others to be baby disruptive forces.
Right.
And maybe the collective, you know, the collective disruptive, baby disruptive forces are going to make a difference if we ask the doctor enough times, hey, do you know about this? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you testing for this? But change always takes longer than we think.
Yeah.
And I learned that in the tech space. Honestly, I got involved with microcomputers before they were even called personal computers. Everybody thought that personal computers would be in every single household by the mid-'80s, and it took the disruptive force of You've Got Mail,
Right.
AOL, to actually drive, for the very first time in the late 90s and early 2000s, drive household penetration of personal computers to over 50%, when the personal computer had actually been affordable, available for over 25 years to consumers. So we just need that You've Got Mail moment.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that might have been COVID. I don't know. Because a lot of people, like, I just feel like, you know, I felt like a biohacker before, and now everyone's testing their blood, everyone's wearing CGM, everyone's taking, it seems like everyone, but it might just be my world, right? It might just be the runners, my listeners. Like, you know, I have a lot of listeners that are not endurance athletes, that are just like into health and wellness, because I have a mix of content, and, you know, they're doing it. They want to do their blood testing. They are curious about CGM, but it's like so small compared to.
I agree. But you know what? You're right about COVID. I see it.
Yeah.
But again, it's bottoms up, right?
It's not enough.
Bottoms up.
Yeah.
We need some top down. We need medical training.
Yes. Medical training and health insurance.
Training, nutrition. Good point. Insurance.
Yeah.
Great point. It's got to flip the game board up. It's got to flip the game board over. It's got to be a new game board. It's got to be disruptive.
You should do it.
Well, I'm trying, really. I'm working at it every single day.
I mean, you have to be able to have both sides, right? Like, you need both sides. Like, you need the experience of running a Fortune 500 company, understanding the mindset of the people who are driving the big yacht, right? Like, if we're talking sailing metaphors, like, you're on the Hobie Cat, you're on the World Cup race boat.
Yeah.
But, like, you need the apartment building size yacht to be able to pivot. I don't know. That's just like,
let's change the world.
I'm in. I mean, sign me up.
Let's change the world, but let's all change the world. You brought up insurance. I mean, that is the most ridiculous thing that exists in our daily life, right? I mean, and nutrition is the key. That's just not that hard a concept to understand.
I don't know how it's going to happen. This is just like, and right now, you know, nutrition is the key. And maybe it's checking in with maybe nutritionists need to be on your health insurance program. And maybe, you know, you need to like get cheaper health insurance based on how many beets you eat per week. Maybe you can monitor that. They LoJack you for everything else.
You hit it. I mean, the model, the prevalent model, it's still in place. It's starting to creak.
Yeah.
But the model in place is, oh, you're sick. let me treat you, as opposed to, hey, let's not get sick. Let's not get overweight. Let's not develop diabetes. Let's not have cardiovascular issues. Let's not have cognitive issues. And that's the Uber model that's going to flip the game board over. We just got to get there. And sometimes when you're fight, I'm fighting, I'm in the trenches and I'm fighting, you can't see the big picture. It probably is starting to, we're probably in the early stages still, but we're starting to bring about change. We're starting to put cracks, in the wall.
When I see the people, certain people that I see asking me about health and wellness, I know that something is coming through because they're more mainstream, like not necessarily my listeners, but just other people that know that I'm into this, like stop me, talk to me about stuff. And I think it's great, but I think it's amazing. Back to HumanN and SuperBeets and Neo40. I think it's amazing what you're doing.
Thank you.
And I've been taking the product since I connected with your team. I think I have seen it around, but I had not been dialed in.
Okay.
I mean, I am a huge fan of beets. So like I said, I'm trying to eat them as much as possible.
So awesome.
Yeah, I mean, and I always go to the farmer's market in New York. So I get that it really does make a difference if they're organic or not.
The challenge though with just eating, is getting enough.
Yeah.
And that's what, if you think about like what we do, we bring the concentration, that's going to move the needle. If you're just juicing, not to say you shouldn't do it, it's just tough to get the amount to move the needle, because even though the body takes the good guys from the plants have different, remember when I told you, can have up to 500% differential in nutrient density. So if you start with the wrong beets, you're not getting any,
there's no value.
And then secondly, you have to get enough of it because the body isn't super efficient, at processing it. So I think the real magic we brought to the equation, frankly, is we've been able to concentrate it, measure it, concentrate it, and deliver it in a delivery system that's going to keep someone compliant.
So you can get the right amount. I mean, it's like anything else, any other thing you supplement with, like if you're taking greens, if you're doing protein, if you're taking vitamin D, like all these things that you need, you cannot just get them from food. This has been super fun. But if you're ever in New York, I'd love to connect, and for sure.
We'll do a in-person podcast. But I would tell you, listen, keep doing what you're doing. You're making a difference. People need it. They need to hear the truth about what's happening with their bodies and how they make their lives better.
Yeah. And where do you see the future of HumanN heading in the next few years? Are there any exciting developments or plans on the horizon?
We'll just never stop. We adapt every day, but our beacon of light forever and ever is always going to be, can we change the trajectory of human cardiovascular health? That's our overarching mission. The one of the three gentlemen who won the Nobel Prize for the discovery of nitric oxide, I told you, started the program at the University of Texas that we were incepted out of. He actually came to work for our company on several projects, including formulation of products, about 5 years ago. And he unfortunately passed away in November. I mean, he lived a great long life, but his mission was always, let's take what we know and make a difference in people's health so that they live better lives. And we love picking up that mantle every single hour of every single day and just seeing what can we do to change lives, because we know that this nitric oxide molecule, we know how critical it is, we know what it does in the human body. If we can just make that better, then we're going to make your life better.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. This has been great.
Loved being with you today. Invite me back.
Yeah, of course.